right, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most pivotal moments in anybody's career, transitioning from a manager to a leader, trying to level yourself up to become better, to become more influential, to become the person that your organization needs to be in order to prosper over time. If there is one critical skill that I would implore every CEO, executive, owner of an organization to teach their direct reports, because their direct reports, if you're the CEO or higher level executive, then you're going to be teaching your younger either VPs or heads of teams to be able to operate and in order to be able to do that, they have to be able to have uncomfortable, very hard conversations, and many times early and often. So becoming a strong leader is part number 3. If you want to see the other sessions, you can go back and see the other 2 masterclasses on leadership, and we're specifically doing a transition from manager to leader stage. What does it take? What is the difference between management and leadership? We talked about that in session 1, and then how do we move forwards to convert ourselves into that leader, that strong organizational leader that gives our entity the most advantageous, the biggest chance of being able to lift itself into the future. That creates the most advantageous environment and activity in our organization so that we can charge forwards with very productive outcomes and hit our goals. All right, so as we move forwards, the subject of today for this masterclass is teaching yourself to do hard conversations consistently well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't learn to do these very critical conversations, you will miss out on so much of the improvement inside your organization. And that will be such a frustration for you and for the rest of your team. And so I want to share with you that some of the best moments in your life and some of the worst moments in your life happen during these very hard conversations. The most forward-moving things in your life happen in hard conversations. Just imagine if any of you who are married, you got down on your knee and you asked your spouse to marry you. This was kind of one of those little bit hard conversations, right? You're like, I don't know. What if she says no? It's going to be hard, but you did it and you got through it. And she said yes, and you move forwards. So it's one of the best moments of your life, but it can also be one of the hardest moments of your life when it has to end up in a termination, in the breaking of a relationship, in moving to different areas. I remember I was working with a group of men, and they were in charge of a charity organization, and we were going forward, and we kept running into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And I understood that ultimately this team, well, it wasn't really a disconnected group of men, didn't really want to win because they weren't willing to have the hard conversations between themselves and between the other members inside of the organization that would enable them to lift themselves to the next level. And inevitably, the team failed. So if you don't learn, if you look at the slide on the screen, if you don't learn this very, very valuable tool of uncomfortable conversations in your organization, then failure is inevitable. It will happen. Now, remember, we're transitioning from just being a manager to actually being a leader. And actually, once you become a leader, there's going to be leadership and management intertwined throughout your journey. However, if you don't learn to do uncomfortable conversations consistently well over the long term, you will have problems and failures, and you'll have continual frustrations in an area of your organization. And sometimes you won't understand why. And it's oftentimes because you haven't had those specific conversations with the people that you need to have them with often enough. So uncomfortable conversations are the catalyst for the best improvements in your organization. I cannot think of a more impactful tool throughout our organization, my organization, which is Taika Translations and TVP Team, where it's changed the trajectory of our future. It's changed where we're headed. It's changed the activity that we have. It's changed the trajectory of a team member being able to stay on our team or have to leave the team because of the wrong or right activity, or being able to convert to that right activity and help a team member, lead a team member in that direction. Sorry, I look down. I'm just making sure that I'm standing in the right spot and that I'm not off kilter in the screen. Okay, so setting up consistent weekly one-on-ones. This is kind of like not a disclaimer, but this is like, as we go into the content, this is something, if you do it well, if you do this one function in your organization well, you will eliminate so many uncomfortable conversations. And I'm not sure how many people actually love having uncomfortable conversations. Some people seem to like to have more uncomfortable conversations than others. And if you do, that's a little weird, because most of us out there, including myself, do not enjoy having uncomfortable conversations. However, if you're like, well, I kind of enjoy what it does. Well, most of the time, if you can say, yes, I actually enjoy what it does, then it means you likely have understood now that the output of the uncomfortable conversation is so valuable. You can almost say, you know what, I kind of like having the uncomfortable conversation simply because of the results. And I completely agree with that aspect of it. But just saying I like to have hard conversations just for the fun of it, I don't know, it makes you a little weird. So all right, so back to this function, guys. I talked about one-on-ones in a different masterclass, and you could go watch that and learn exactly how to do the one-on-ones and why they're so impactful and why they eliminate so many of the uncomfortable conversations. So please go ahead and go do that in addition to this training session, because it will help you if you don't know about that. If you don't exactly know what to do in a one-on-one, basically you're asking these 3 questions weekly, every single week. I was going to say weekly consistently, but that kind of defeats the point. Weekly. So what were you supposed to do, and what did you do? That's like the first question that you work through as you talk with your team member in a one-on-one. Now you weave that into conversation, right? I'm not going to go through the whole program here. You can go back and watch that training session, because it's an entire session simply on the one-on-one. So many people do them very, very poorly and wonder why they end up frustrated, or they're frustrated with their team member. Okay, so the next question in the weekly one-on-one is, what will you do for this between this meeting and next week meeting? And then the final question in this one-on-one weekly meeting with a leader and a team member is, what do you need my help with, or what roadblocks do you need me to help remove and that you're facing? Now, if you have these sessions, if these actual one-on-ones consistently again and again and again, it eliminates so much of these so many of these uncomfortable conversations. And I would implore you to initiate these if you haven't done so already. It will in a single cycle, which is like 1 month period of time, doing these each week, boom, 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 you will eliminate so much of the lack of clarity that sometimes some of you feel like you're facing today. Many uncomfortable conversations are avoidable if you're leading well. If you're leading well, if you're having those one-on-one weekly meetings, then the actual uncomfortable, the hard, challenging, very painful part of uncomfortable conversations is very, very avoidable. But if you have direct reports that would be surprised about what you really think about their performance, I've got news for you. You are not leading well. Listen to me closely here. Like, this is very important for you to know. If you are in a position of leadership, now I didn't say if you're a leader, you might hold the position of leadership and not be leading. So if you're in a position of leadership and you're not leading well, I'm glad you're here, because that's what we're learning to do. We're transitioning from leading poorly to actually leading well, to lead teams that actually produce massive output and charge into the future, charge the gates of hell with you, in your organization. So if you have a direct report, as we go through this, guys, remember this. If you have a direct report that would be surprised about what you really think about their performance, you are not leading well. And I would very sternly encourage you to drive to clarity and truth in your organization. If you have conversations with your spouse about how frustrated you are with a team member, and you never actually deliver that information to the source of frustration, you're not leading well. Your spouse was not made to hear all of this information about your frustrations in and around your team. Your spouse is there to support and encourage you and to be your friend for all of your life. No, I don't mean just your spouse, but it could be a friend. It could be someone else in your life. It could, and you're just like, man, I just hate this person so much because they cause me so much frustration. They're actually in your organization, or they might actually be your direct report, and they have no idea that you hate their guts. Like, you shouldn't hate anybody's guts in your organization. If you do, that's also a sign that you're not leading well, and we've got to correct that. And so that's what all of this is about today. And I'm so excited to be able to share this with you, because this masterclass is a life-changing masterclass that changed my life when I started to do this really well and consistently. And it's something that you never stop doing. When you become a doctor and you get into medicine, and you hang your shingle out on your front door of your clinic, right? And people come and start visiting you. It's like they say you're practicing medicine, right? They say the doctor or the physician is practicing medicine. And I want to remind you and I, as leaders, we're practicing leadership. We're never completely at the end. We never just finally become the epitome of excellent leadership. We have to do the work. We have to do the foundational work to build ourselves into those positions. And that's what masterclasses like this help us do. So how do I know anything? Well, if you haven't been on this channel before, if you don't know exactly who I am, my name is Jason Ellinger. I'm the CEO of Taika Translations and TVB Team. We're a multi-million-dollar organization, and we serve people all around the world in the area of language services, interpretation, 5-way compliance, and in-country agency, facilitating business transactions for people all over the globe. And so as we do this, and as we build our reputation in our markets, these types of trainings help me to be able to demonstrate to organizations how they need to lead their teams. And so I do these trainings for that purpose. All right, so please like our channel, and subscribe, please, if you would. It would mean the world to us. And if you have a question or a comment about anything that I say during this training today, please leave it in the chat, and my trusty team member, Karina, who is on the screen with me here, she will make sure that I see it. So thank you very much and for being here today. I look forward to sharing with you this content. I think this is transformative content that will really help you change the trajectory of your business, and more importantly, the effectiveness of your leadership. All right, so here we go. Oh my gosh. I had a section of my company. I had a section of my company, and I thought my team member knew exactly what he was supposed to do. And he did. And it cost us thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in losses that year. And it was a very painful experience. And so as there was a very pivotal moment in our working together as a team, where I was like, look, man, our business is supposed to make profit. And because of what happened and what you did, we lost a ton of money from our investment that we made in this. Now, I need to know right now, are you going to make the necessary changes in your behavior in order to move forwards and cause us to prosper. Because if you don't, 12 months from today, I'm shutting the entire organization down and we're going a different direction. And we're parting ways, literally. And I saw the most incredible transformation of that gentleman over the next 12 months. In that conversation, he was like, man, Jason, I messed up big time. Like, I didn't see it before. You helped me see this right now. And I realized that what I did caused a terrible, terrible problem. And obviously we're in business to be in business because we love the things that we do. But what I just did was literally unacceptable. And I apologize for that. And I was like, well, that's all good and well. And thank you very much for the apology. There's still thousands of dollars of losses going forwards. That can't be a reality. And he's like, I understand. And so, all right. I said, all right. If you understand, it's going to be manifest in your work. I'm going to be able to see this very clearly, very quickly. And I said, here's the very specific things that have to change in our operations in order to move us to profitability. Are you willing to do that in your section? If you're not, tell me now and we can part ways. If you are, I need to see it in activity over the next 8 months. And by 12 months, I'm going to make the final decision on what we're going to do. And lo and behold, the guy was like, he completely took on my urgency. He decided to fill all of the tasks and not only do the things that I asked, but also see other opportunities where he could improve and go to a whole new level. And by the end of that 12 months, we completely swung. I don't know. I'm using some of my southern twang here. We completely shifted the entire trajectory of the organization. And we actually made a profit by the end of that year, which I thought was going to be impossible. But because we had a hard conversation at that moment, we had been working together for 4 years at this point. And I wasn't paying attention to a very critical operation. And I should have been. But then when I started paying attention, and I was like, well, gosh, it could be easily fixed if we did this, and this. And then I had the interaction with the team member. And he was like, oh my gosh, I see that. Now I will do that. And now I can move forwards. That is your role as a leader. Your role as a leader is to be able to see what needs to be done, make that shift in behavior, and inspire your team members to be able to do that for you, for the entire organization's good, so that you can go and launch into the future, the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But you can't do that if you're not able to have uncomfortable conversations. And so many leaders are terrible at this. And so many leaders, they think they work their way up the totem pole to feel like at some point, I will get to the point where I no longer have to do any hard conversations. And that is completely false. If you do that, you will sabotage the success of your organization and you will never win. You will condemn your organization to mundane performance and ultimately inevitable failure. And so I would encourage you in this content that we're having today, in this masterclass, to fully take it on, embody it, and then charge forward using it in your organization to help your team prosper. Having hard conversations early enough will cost loss. I hope you saw that from the example that I just gave you. That was a real life example. I just didn't name names that give specific information simply because, if that person actually watches the video, it might be too embarrassing. All right, so how do we avoid loss? All right, the biggest challenge that I think there is in leadership is this. It is to model for others what was never modeled for us. And so many people are not able to have incredible, hard conversations simply because it was never modeled for them. I mean, how many times have you met someone who has modeled for you a hard conversation? Many times we try to avoid those or try to keep our lives in this kind of this plateau of peace so that we don't have to deal with very terrible and hard conversations. It's something that we don't just endeavor to find more and more hard conversations. We want to find less and less of those. Obviously, if you're a normal person, you're going to be trying to do that. I understand that. But it was never modeled for you. So how are you and I going to be good at it? I love when Jordan Peterson, he's giving a seminar, the great psychologist, and he's talking about Um, when you're designing your future, your life's future. And he's like, sit down and take 15 minutes and write a vision for your life. And you're like, what the heck, 15 minutes? How am I supposed to do this well? And then he continues. He pauses for a second at that point. He says, like, you're thinking in the back of your mind, how the heck am I going to do this well? And then he's like, you should suck at it because you've never done it before. Okay? So this is fine. And that's where we start. But we practice and we get better. And we begin to understand by this modeling effect of how we've seen others do it and take on that into our own lives and then apply it. Tough conversations are some of the most unmodeled skills in the workforce. Among leadership, it is probably the most unmodeled thing, because everybody is trying, trying our utmost to get to the point where we no longer have hard conversations. And this very week, I have entered a situation where I have to have I'm kind of having a hard conversation with a section of our organization. I'm like, my gosh, I thought I got through that level, and I haven't. You never do. You never get through that level. It is always a part of your job responsibilities, and you will bear that burden until the end of your career. And it's not a bad thing. It's simply a responsibility that you and I have to be able to get good at, because it's an obligation to be able to hold that executive leadership position. So today we're going to unpack and even do some modeling of these things. Now listen, by the end of this webinar, you will have the tools to help you confidently initiate an uncomfortable conversation. You will have an actual plan on how to make these conversations respectful, dignified, and loving. And if you would like the plan, we will give that to you, but you're going to have to request it. Okay. So I need you to specifically go into our chat and write an ask to request to us about the plan, and we will follow up with the next couple of days and give that to you. You will have to, and then the third thing is you will have what you need in order to teach your team. So guys, that's what we're doing in this webinar, and I hope that as we wrap up the webinar, that this is a reality for you. So let's go over some very important things. Why do we abdicate some of the most critical conversations that we need to be having in our organization, and how we can embrace the required activity? Okay, what is the model? We'll talk about that, and what is the plan? How does that plan? How does it work? Okay, abdication. Good and healthy leaders, they don't enjoy creating discomfort or pain. We don't. I already talked about this. And there is a fear of doing these poorly. The stakes are very high in uncomfortable conversations, and I understand that. And I think that you have to be very, very honest with yourself that the stakes are high in the uncomfortable conversation, and that is a burden that you take onto yourself. Now, listen, when you went to ask your spouse to marry you, you got down on one knee, you presented the ring, at least I did, and then you said, "Will you marry me?" The stakes are freaking high. What if she said no? Like, we could have a different perspective. Thankfully, I've been married for 16 years now. Hallelujah. It's great. We have 8 kids. This is awesome. But what if she said no? It would be crushing, right? And maybe some of you have had that experience. It would be bone crushingly painful, right? So there is a real fear of doing harm, and the stakes in these conversations are high, which is why we often abdicate, put off, or avoid these hard conversations. Hurt and harm, we might hurt someone. And I want to let you know that hurting is okay. Hurting someone is okay as long as the intention is going in the right direction. Harming someone is not okay. Okay? And they're not the same thing. Sometimes we just throw them all in the same basket, and we think hurting and harming is the same thing. If I hurt somebody's feelings, or if I have to correct them and they don't do what I say, then I might be harming them. And how do I work through the psychological? Like, how do I help them? And how can I be a good leader? How can I be a pragmatic leader if I'm hurting people? And this is, well, how's it going to look for the rest of the team? Oh my gosh! And then you abdicate, because it's getting all of this noise in your head says it might end up badly, and the risk is too high to have the uncomfortable conversation. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, the risk is too high not to have the uncomfortable conversations, because it will over time crush your organization. And crushing the entire organization for the entire team is much worse than actually having a hard conversation. Okay? So listen, it's okay to hurt someone if you have their best interest in mind. It is not okay to harm someone. And there's a difference. What should your interest be? Political correctness or getting results. Now listen, in hard conversations, you can't always be politically correct. And that's one of the things that you need to know as a leader. Well, I want to be politically correct. Humans operating on human levels cannot always be politically correct. And I know that's a little bit like, but I'm trying to lead at this really high level and I don't know. And what if I say something that's politically incorrect? I'll just help you. In uncomfortable conversations, we're not worried about political correctness. We're worried about getting results. And oftentimes, you will walk right on the boundary of the political correctness thing and maybe even step into political incorrectness a little bit to communicate the point. And it's very, very important for you to understand that we're not looking for political correctness. We're looking for results. Now, if you invest in an uncomfortable conversation, it must produce results. If you're going to go through the turmoil, the suffering that it causes you to actually create, plan for, and have the uncomfortable conversation, then by golly, make it produce results. You can't just go around having uncomfortable conversations that never actually have followed through and produced results. Now let's go and look at the difference between harm and hurt. Okay, so harm is centered around the identity of the person. There's always an effective way to communicate with people about the behavioral improvement that they need to make. There is always one, and if you ever let yourself think, well, there's no way for me to communicate correctly to them how they need to improve without hurting them or harming their identity. And that is not something that we need to do in order to create improvement. Here are some examples. You're not good enough. That would harm somebody. It means they will perpetually never be good enough. And you can't do that because if you're going to lead them, they have to be able to understand that they can go forwards at 4, and they will be good enough to be on the team and good enough to be on this A-class team that you're producing to be able to produce the results you're after. So what can we say instead of you're not good enough? Hi, Joe. We have to work through this. And in this aspect of your performance, we have to improve your skills because you simply, in this area, we're seeing some deficiency in your ability to perform. Okay, so your skill improvement has to be made. All right, so you're not smart enough. That's not good. We can't say that. That's an identity thing. We have to focus on critical thinking. When we're working on a project together with this team, we need you to increase your critical thinking skills and actually pay attention to what the whole team is talking about so you can be a contributor and not a dead weight. And so, see, we kind of treaded on the border of political correctness, but we still getting the message across. So you're lazy. Okay, look, I need you to share my urgency. That's completely different than saying you are intentionally lazy and you yourself, your identity is lazy. That's not going to be helpful, and that's not going to help them understand what direction they need to move. Okay, you don't have any skills. Look, I need you to embrace and apply the training, okay? No one likes you. That's not going to be helpful for them. That's going to be very painful for them, and it's going to be attacking their identity. Look, John, you make it very difficult for people to get to know you, and that has to change because we work together as a team. So if you're going to be able to work together as a team, people on the team have to connect to each other on a much deeper than surface level. So we're going to have to work on this, helping you get making it less hard for people to get to know you. So these are differences in how you can communicate in a harm, which is connected to identity, versus identity way. So hurt must include hope. It may hurt, but it cannot be without remedy. If you prescribe somebody with a thing, no one likes you, there's no hope. How do we change? How do I fix that? But you make it very hard to get to know you. Well, we can work on coaching that. We can work with this person, build them up to help them get to the level they need to be and build a plan and help them to create a plan for that if they need us to step in. Okay, so here's some unconditional rules. Unconditional in every scenario. You may never implicitly or explicitly make someone feel like they will never be enough. This is a rule that you can never violate. As a leader, going from manager to leader, you can never implicitly or explicitly make someone feel like they will never be enough. Once you have done that, if you have put that nail in the coffin, your ability to lead and influence that team member is completely over. You will never again be able to lead them in a very productive way. Or it will be unbelievably difficult to move from making them feel like they will never, ever be enough. My personal belief is that every single person, if they so desire, they can achieve anything in life that they want. But they have to want it, and they have to take the actions towards it. If you and I follow this rule, it is highly unlikely that you will ever actually harm the person you are counseling, you're coaching, and that you're working with to increase their performance. Okay? So if you work on these rules, if you work with these rules in your activity, then you will never actually harm someone. It's very, very unlikely for you to actually get to the point where you harm someone in your work. Hurting is okay for a season to inspire them to move in the right direction, but harming is absolutely not, because it's connected to their identity, and that's not a level you can go to as a leader and continue to be effective. So what is your role as a leader in having uncomfortable conversations? Your role is to clarify the problem. Crystal clear, 7th grade English. This is not a genius test. It is not complicated. It is so plain and clear that your 7th grader would understand. John, I need you to do X, X, and X on X, X, and X days. Okay. Be an advocate for their growth. You're first a coach before you're a cop, okay? Don't ever come into the situation like, okay, I'm a cop and I gotta fix the situation and you're about to be arrested. Like, that's not the environment we're trying to create. We are coaches for our team, coaching them upward and forwards. Your role is to clarify. When you provide coaching, it's their responsibility to act. So you clarify what has to be done. You make it crystal clear. And the team's responsibility is to fulfill the actions necessary to make that coaching applied. Okay? And you explain the consequences of inaction. No threatening. You're not allowed to threat. You should stick away from threat. Threatening is a bad parenting style for 2-year-olds. Okay? So don't do that. Explain the consequences of inaction, but do not threaten. Just make clear what the next steps are in the process. And that's why we use process to help us in uncomfortable conversations, to maintain dignity and keep it kind. All right, what is the team member's role? And the team member's role in this entire process is this. They must accept and apply your coaching. You have the conversation and they have a bunch of rebuttals against whatever it is that you're saying. They're not accepting what you're saying, and they're not going to be able to apply it, which means the outcome is going to be 0 results. So they must accept and apply the coaching, and they must share your urgency. These are the 3 things. And this has to be communicated, and I'll talk to you about how to do that in later slides. Now, there's a very important metaphor that I would like you to use as you work through your uncomfortable conversations. I find it to be very, very helpful, and I've used it many times in the past. So the table method is this. When you start your conversations, you sit down. So when you start the conversations with the team member, you have them sitting down. It's like, John, right now, I just want to let you know we're on the same side of the table. I'm sitting down next to you on our side of the table, but our team, your team, is on the other side of the table. The team that I'm leading to prosper is on the other side of the table. And what I'm committed to doing is to work with you, to coach you to where you can go with me around to the other side of the table. There may be a point throughout this coaching session that if you have not shared my urgency and applied my training, where I stand up and then then you're going to help me decide if you're going to go around the other side of the table with me, or if the ultimate, we're going to have to part ways. And so the table metaphor is very helpful to be able to kind of really communicate the message that right now we are on the same side of the table, and I'm helping you, coaching you upwards and forwards, as long as you share my urgency and apply my training. And if you do those two things, that's it, those two things, then we can charge forward together, and all this is behind us in a very short period of time. Now, we're going to get to how we work through these conversations in a little bit, but I'm working through the information so that you have it in your backpack or in your toolbox, so that as you work through these uncomfortable conversations, you know what you need to know. All right. 3 important elements of the process. To make the uncomfortable conversation respectful and fair, we use a repeatable process. It has to be repeatable. You have to know the process. You have to be able to work through the process yourself so that you can work through it with your team member. Okay? Then we have to prepare for the conversation. We actually have to spend time preparing for the hard conversation. We don't just jump in and have a hard conversation. If you do that, you will very likely harm someone, even if you're trying not to. Okay? So if we want to keep on the up and up, if we want to keep and be very influential and effective as leaders, then we're going to have to make sure that we're worked through a repeatable process. And that's what I'm going to share with you later. So we have to prepare for the conversation, and then we have to use clear principles to keep the conversation loving and kind. And we'll talk about that as we move forward. So what is the process? Here's the process. Here's the process, guys. First contact is where we're at the very initial stages. And in these initial stages, it is where we have identified that this is definitely a problem, and that we're going to have to meet with so-and-so about whatever the problem is. All right. And so it's a problem, and we're going to deal with it. Great. And this is the first contact. If you have a great team, many times, first contact is all that it's going to take in order to make a change. I had a team member about a year ago that I was working that my second level leaders, they came to me and said, we've got a problem with this person. And it's pretty big. And I was like, okay, looked at the problem, talked to them about the problem, got the details of what the problem was. And then we were like, okay, well, let's have the uncomfortable conversation. And so we went to have the uncomfortable conversation. And it only took 3 meetings. Everything was solved. When it was like, oh my gosh, if they can't get this right, then we're going to have to fire them. And it's going to be so scary. And what if we have to, oh my gosh. And it's like, hold on. We can just have the uncomfortable conversation, work through the process, and we'll see. But it's very likely, if they're a genuinely good person and they're competent, that they will have a turnaround, and they'll be able to stay on our team. And so we went into that process, and it only took a few meetings of coaching to be able to work through the process. And it was an awesome experience. The team member still works with us today. All right, so first contact, coaching upward. So from first contact, we move to coaching upward. If they're taking our urgency and applying our training, using the urgency and applying the training, we get to continue. But if we have to move to the third step, it's emotional firing, which means you fully comprehend the weight of inaction. It means they feel like they've been fired pretty much, but they haven't been fired yet. But it's possibly leading to a termination. Okay? And so at this point, it gets a little heavy, very heavy. All right, so if they have decided that they're going to stay and try to work through this, then again, apply my training and share my urgency, and we have an improvement plan that has 0 wiggle room. If we get to 0 wiggle room plan, it's very, very severe. Meaning, if anything goes wrong, it doesn't matter the reason, we're done. Okay? Because it's a plan that they worked with us to create themselves. All right. And then the final step in the hard conversation, the final hard conversation process is the swift release and termination of professional relationship. And at this stage, if you work through the process, it's very, very understandable. It's very, very expected. It's not like, what? I just walked in and got fired because of lack of performance, or because my team members didn't like me, or because nobody told me that I was really doing bad in this area and I needed to improve. But here we are. Okay. So this is the process. Now let's talk about it. All right. How many sessions are there? Somebody says, how many sessions do I have to improve this thing? Look, this is organic. People are organic. It's, if you have to choose between 100 and 7, okay, I would definitely choose 7, preferably 3. Okay. The less, the better, because we don't want to spend our life in uncomfortable conversation or in coaching someone up to a level just so they can do their job, just so we can start moving forward in our work. Because again, this person is in deficit at this point. It means they're not doing their job. We're bringing them up to the level, being able to do their job, and then charge forward with the team. We have to get them to that level first before we can actually move forward with the rest of the team to produce into the future. And if they're not even doing their job, well, this is already a problem, a big problem that we have to fix. And it has to be fixed immediately. And so it's an organic thing, and each situation will be different. Some may take longer to train and implement. Some there could be a number of different reasons and influences as to how long it's going to take to be able to bring some up to a certain level, or how many times you have to meet. But I will say the time is short. And that is very important for you as a leader to know. This is not something that is just a big, unending, never a very cloud. Like, no, the time is very short. Like, we need to see drastic improvement within 30 days. I need to be able to feel like you have improved so greatly that the trajectory has shifted from like off the bus to maybe they're going to actually be able to stay on the bus and go with us. So it's a very short period of time. This is not a long, drawn out drudgery thing for the leader to do. You're doing something helpful for your team to make sure that they can stay in their job and win. And if they don't hold the same urgency and desire that you have for them to stay there, then they don't get to stay. However, if you do these correctly, termination is very unlikely. But if it is required, it is very swift and very dignified. Okay, people have to be treated like people. So the point is, how many sessions there are, it's challenging to know exactly, but it depends on the situation and the problem that you're facing. Some things are very dynamic and complex, and they involve multiple sections, and you have to deal with that. Some of it's simply a behavior that needs to change, and you get to help them change the behavior. And that's just like, okay, this has to stop because it can't exist on our team. Like, you would not believe it, but like this personal hygiene thing, you can't do. I used to have, oh my gosh, I had a team member that was brushing his teeth every day in the sink in the kitchen where everybody was eating, and it would gross everybody else out. And so it was like, Miss team member, you cannot brush your teeth. Like, we have bathrooms right down the hall. Just go in a private space and you brush your teeth there, right? And that's very fast. Just done. It's fixed, right? So that can be done very quickly. But some things, if they are complicated and they take some maybe training, education, some learning, maybe it's going to take longer. Or maybe it's a habit that somebody has that's going to take them a little longer to train out of that habit so they can actually connect to their team. And this is going to be all organic, and it's just very, very situational. Okay, so that's part of leadership. You knowing how to do what you need to do when you should do it. And that's why you're a leader. All right, so preparation. Listen, never hold constructive truth back. Constructive truth may be painful to deliver or hear, but if you hold it back, you're only going to shoot yourself in the foot. You're only going to cause yourself to not be able to address the elephant in the room that causes things to move. Provide the last 10% of truth. Don't skimp on what the problem is. Drive to that. If the person is humming during the meetings and they've done this for months and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is so annoying during the meetings, they have to stop humming. And so you say, hey, John, you've got to have to stop humming during our meetings. It's bothering everyone. And they're like, oh yeah, definitely. I'm going to change that. Okay, great. And then they go 2 or 3 weeks and they start doing it again. You're like, hey, John, you were humming in the meeting today and it was very distracting and we can't do that anymore. It's like, oh yeah, Like, it can be that small. Like, the changes that have to be made in your organization so that the team can be unified and charge forward, they can be that small. And so it's important for you as leader to have these uncomfortable conversations to be able to make sure that you can move forwards and upwards. Now, listen, like I said in the beginning, if you have the one-on-one, the sessions every single week, and you're actually applying the principles of the one-on-one session as you work through building your team, then you will be able to eliminate having to actually move into the actual structure of the hard conversation. Now, be clear. To be unclear is to be unkind. I hope that you are understanding by now that driving to clarity in these meetings, spelling it out, 7th grade English, it very, very clearly is vital for you to be able to make any change at all in the trajectory of your organization, the trajectory of how people are going to take and apply the training that you are giving them, and apply and embrace your urgency. If you don't know what they need to improve, they cannot and they will not improve. Remember that. And so many leaders well, John, the reason we're having this meeting today is because there's a lot of tension in the office. Well, okay, what's the tension about? I'm not exactly sure what the tension is about, and I don't know why it keeps happening, but it's coming from you, and it has to stop. And if it doesn't stop now, something really bad's going to happen. You're like, what the heck do I do? Okay, so that is an example of a terrible conversation that cannot come from the mouth of a leader. Maybe at the managerial level that might happen, but a leader better see that and fix that immediately if they're going to be having great leaders operating in their organization. So if you don't know what they need to improve, they cannot and they will not improve it. This is part of leadership. This is why you hold the position you hold. I was like, well, I got to this level of leadership so I could be a diplomat in my organization. Well, then you got to leadership for the wrong reason, because leaders have to do this stuff. This is part of our job. It keeps the conversation short. So throughout this masterclass today, you might be thinking, well, my gosh, this is going to take forever. Actually, that is absolutely not the case. It's going to be a very short and very clear and very kind exchange. After the exchange, you move to the specific required outcomes, and then out goes the team member to their perspective section, and they start their work, and you do the observation, and you go about your work. This is not long. They don't take tons and tons of time. These uncomfortable conversations are interactions that happen. You do the thing, you talk about the thing, you make it very clear, what the next steps are, and then you part ways, and people perform, and you monitor the performance. Now, dignity is directly tied to your preparation of the actual process. And this keeps the conversation short, and it's merciful, and it's kind, and the short interactions with specific outcomes causes massive changes. If you have short interactions with very clear outcomes, the changes are massive, and your organization gets to charge forward into the future and prosper. All right, so some very, very clear principles. Look, create safety and build rapport. You have to do it. You have to create a safe environment and build rapport. Never leverage a person's insecurity to produce change. If you leverage a person's insecurity to produce change, you're attacking their identity and you will cause them harm. Don't do it. Never violate this principle. Explicit or implicit, causing people to feel they can never be enough, even if it's unintentional, is a terminal impact on your leadership ability for this team member. So never violate that principle. Waiting to explode is not an option. You have your own personal meter, which is your heart rate, right? We can feel our heartbeat. Put your fingers right there in between. You can feel your jugular, right? And beating, bum, 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 right? That's your own personal meter. If your heart rate is at a 10 out of a 10, okay, we're not using exact numbers here. I understand that's not how they measure heart rates. But if your heart rate is really beating fast and you're feeling stressed and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Don't have the meeting. It would be better to not do the meeting and put it on a different day than actually have the meeting. The appropriate heart rate to have an uncomfortable conversation meeting is like a 2 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 is like you sprinting down on the treadmill, like sprinting. Okay, that's 10 out of 10. But 2 out of 10 is you calmly, contemplatively thinking about what you're working through and dealing with a challenging issue in a very calm and very peaceful environment. And if you can't do that, wait till you can. Otherwise, it's very likely that you will cause harm instead of just hurt for the period of time so it needs to help, so that you can help them improve. All right, so these are some principles. Do not violate them. And these are the ones, if you don't violate them, that you will actually be able to help your team member improve instead of suffer from poor leadership. All right, what to do? What to do if things get emotional? I'm sorry. What to do if things get emotional on the team member's side? Remember, we want everything to stay in the prefrontal cortex. We don't want to move to the amygdala in our thinking process. We want it to stay up front. We don't want to get into fight or flight mode. We're not here to scare people. We're not here to make people feel terrible and just to feel like, oh my gosh, if I don't fight back, then I'm not gonna be able to stay, and my security's off. And oh my gosh, listen, this is where you stop. You call the person into your office. You're having the very first meeting. You say these exact words or something very similar. Hey, Jordan, in 6 months, we're going to both want to look back on this conversation. And when we do, I know that we're both going to want to be able to say that this was a dignified conversation. So if they get super emotional, if they get super tight inside the meeting and start to transition to that amygdala response instead of the prefrontal cortex being able to logically work through the issue, then we need to pause, and you can say this phrase or some version of this phrase, and it will help them and just give them a moment to collect themselves, bring themselves back to the conversation. Yes, you're right. We will both want to know that this was a dignified conversation. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Now let's proceed. This will help him or her collect themselves and to refocus on what the issue is instead of being like, oh my gosh, I just lost my job. Like, wait a minute, nothing happened yet. We didn't even start the conversation. This is actually when we've been talking for a little bit. You've delivered a piece of maybe hurtful information, not harmful, that needs to change. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. And you're like, no, you haven't lost your job today. And remember, in 6 months, we're going to want to be able to look back on this and know, and both of us to be able to say, this was a very dignified conversation, and we helped each other move forwards in life. And that's awesome. And people and teams that can help people do that, that's where the real leadership happens. So what do I do today? This will require more than one interaction, longer than 5 minutes. This is very important. Have a written plan when you go to your meeting. Being unprepared is that worse than looking unprepared. If you go into a meeting where you have to help a team member correct themselves, being unprepared for that meeting is actually far worse than looking unprepared. So many people are like, well, if I have a piece of paper that I go with me, like a plan, uncomfortable conversation plan paper that I have with me that I'm going to this meeting, won't I look like I'm unprepared? Won't I look like I don't know what I'm doing? You might, but it's a heck of a lot better than actually being unprepared. So if you've actually taken your time to prepare, and by the way, we will send you these, we will send you the plan, but you're going to have to reach out to us and ask for it. And if this is after the live masterclass, that's fine. Post a comment and we will still reach out to us, and we can still get this information to you. And it will still be helpful and a very big blessing to you as you work through these meetings. So have a written plan ready that you can work through to get to initiate and guide the conversation. Okay? It will help you to be more prepared, not less. So I very strongly, it will take you 15 minutes and you'll be prepared for the meeting, and you'll have so much more confidence going into it. And then the team member will oftentimes feel much more appreciated and actually have this kind of sense of dignity that, wow, this person actually took the time to prepare to have this conversation with me. All right. So some first contact conversations do not require tons and tons of preparation. Now, listen, I talked about in the beginning where the one-on-one is. Remember the one-on-one. If you have one-on-ones effectively, week after week after week, it will eliminate so many of those uncomfortable conversations that take much longer to have. All right. So because leaders abdicate their swift, uncomfortable conversations like, hey, Jack, in the meeting today, you were humming and it was very, very annoying for everyone in the meeting and distracting everyone. So in the future, you have to stop, please. And that leads to more and more very serious, uncomfortable conversations. So don't abdicate your role as a leader. You never get to the point of your leadership that you don't have to deal with your direct reports and manage their productivity and their team membership unity. You never get to that point. There will never be a point. You don't get to the CEO or executive level position to abdicate or to be able to no longer have to do any of the challenging stuff. In fact, in my leadership role in our organizations, sometimes I have to do much harder things that I had to do when I was at a much lower level and have much more embarrassing conversations, potentially embarrassing to the individual conversations, and just uncomfortable. And you're like, man, I wanted to get to this high professional level so that I didn't have to deal with that. That's sometimes what we think at the beginning, because it's like a reward-centered leadership instead of a service-centered leadership. So Patrick Lencioni talks about that in his book, The Motive. It's a completely different topic. But anyways, don't abdicate your important role to have hard conversations consistently. So there was a production chief, and he started to talk about in his company how he was going to be promoted to chief operations officer. And he's like, I'm going to be the CEO of our organization. I'm going to be the CEO of our organization. And the CEO, he hadn't heard this rumor. He also didn't tell the production chief that he was going to be the next CEO. But this production chief started telling everybody, including the other executives, that he was going to be the next COO. And one of the other executives on the executive team, who was a direct report to the CEO, said, hey, this production chief is saying he's going to become the next CEO. Did you guys decide that? Is that your decision? And the CEO said, no, what are you talking about? It's like, no, so-and-so is going throughout our company, telling everyone that he's becoming the next COO. And it was like, nobody even likes him. And the CEO was like, well, I definitely never had that conversation. Well, can you please tell so-and-so to stop telling everybody that? And the CEO said, I don't have time to deal with stupid stuff like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, you just abdicated one of the most important things that you could have done to serve your entire team and to eliminate conflict and to drive out drama. You just told your team member to their face that you didn't care. You didn't care about their team. You didn't care about the drama they're dealing with. And you didn't care about the interfighting inside the organization that's going to happen. Can you imagine the breakdown? All that CEO would have had to do. All that CEO would have had to do was pick up the phone and say, hey, Jack, I'm hearing this rumor that you're telling people that you're becoming the next COO. Yeah, if you keep doing that, probably not going to work out good for you. So stop, please. Hang up the phone. We're done. Problem solved. But he wouldn't even have that conversation. And so many small issues are fixable far before we actually have to get into the really comprehensive, uncomfortable conversation stage. And I just want to drive that point home, because if you as a leader are doing that, then you will save you and your team so much frustration and pain. And so many teams go through so much unnecessary pain and frustration simply because they don't have a leader or a group of leaders, because this could be at multiple levels. It's not just the COO or CEO. It can be at different levels that are not properly having these conversations and eliminating all of these kind of small problems in the organization, because they now think that they're a level that's too high to have to deal with such lowly work. And it's not the case at all. It's a constant throughout your entire career. And when you become the chief of it all, it's like even more so. So have the short and clear conversations early and often, and you will eliminate mountains of frustration and difficult conversations. Every big problem was once a small problem that a leader failed to address. Remember this. Every single big problem was once a small problem that a leader failed to address. So when it's required, you act. You have the first contact. You bring the plan. You set the tone in the first 10 seconds of the meeting. You keep things in the prefrontal cortex instead of letting it move back to the amygdala. Right, fight or flight. We keep it out of that zone. We inform the team member of the infractions that they're dealing with very, very clearly. 7th grade English. We inform them of the data collected from the other leaders, saying it's not just us, it's actually the team that's actually helping, that's helped us to clarify that this is really an issue. And then we inform them of the requirement to share the urgency and apply the coaching. And then we inform them of the changes that must take place by when. Okay, this all has to happen. And when you do this, it does miracles. Now, here we go. What do we say? Now we're getting to the modeling part, guys. We're starting to get to the end. Hang with me. We're almost there. All right. And by the way, if you have any questions, please put the questions in the comment section, and Karina will make sure that I get to them. All right. So what to say in the meeting? So let's have our conversation. So John is all right. So we got into the scenario. We actually realized that we have to have a hard conversation. And now we're having our very first contact conversation. And this is how it can go. John, so just visualize it with me. Person comes in the door, sits down in the office. You've invited them to your office this morning. One moment. Karina has stopped me for 1 second. Ask if the person has any question. Okay, Kushmeet, I saw you said, hey, bro, please let me know, sir, if you have a question. If you do, put it in the chat, and Karina will make sure I see it right now. So thank you very much, Karina, for pointing that out to me. She stopped me dead in my tracks and said, wait, don't go on before you address this issue. So I'm asking you now, sir, if you have a question, please go ahead and drop it in the chat, and we'll address it. Okay? All right, let's move forwards. All right, back to our scenario. John comes in the door. You're sitting at your office desk, or you greet him as he comes to the door. Have a seat. So, John, this is going to be a potentially uncomfortable conversation. Oh my gosh, the person feels like they just got fired. Don't worry. No one is going to lose their job today. Boom! We brought them out of that. They were transitioning back to their amygdala, and we helped them step right back into the prefrontal cortex. Okay. Then what is going to be uncomfortable here? Today, I'm going to share my perspective, and I want to give you space to share yours with me as well. But to be honest, this is probably not a one-time meeting that we're going to have. We're like at 40 seconds, and do you already see how much clarity that we have in this meeting? How much fear we've eliminated, and how we've already set the tone for like, well, it's kind of beating around the bush. No, we've already said it's going to be uncomfortable. Probably not going to be one time. Something definitely has to change. And no, you're not getting fired today. Like this is actually something that is going to be fixed. Okay, so we're engaged. Can you feel the energy? It's like we're 40 seconds in. This is not a long meeting so far, and we're engaged already. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay, so I need to pay attention. John, there are some behaviors I've observed, and I've confirmed with the team and your leaders the interactions from the other team members. And the problem we're talking about happens pretty often. And oftentimes we see you choosing gossip over productive conflict in our wider team. And as you know, in our organization, gossip is one of our core, like this is one of the things that we do not allow in the organization in any way, shape, or form. So at this point we say, all right, I just want to check in to make sure you're doing okay. Because remember, nobody's getting fired today, but this is something that we have to work on. Conversation continues. The behavior you're exhibiting is starting to foster an environment around you that people don't trust you. Because obviously, if somebody's gossiping, well, who knows when they're going to gossip about what, right? And so people aren't able to trust you. Because teams grow at the speed of trust, it's vital for us to work on this thing together for you to be able to succeed. So John, I want to make sure that you understand this is not a caution. It's not a yield sign. This is actually a stop sign. So it's a full stop. You brought the vehicle to full stop, and I need You just stop right now in your tracks and become completely aware of how your behavior is impacting the wider team. So this is the point where you would insert the table method. You'd be like, so like this is like 3 minutes into the meeting. Remember, I told you guys this doesn't take long. It's very short. So this is where you insert the table method. John, right now, I just want to let you know, I'm on your side of the table. We're sitting next to each other. You and me are sitting next to each other on the same side of the table. And our team right now is on the other side of the table because they're having trust issues with you because you're spreading gossip throughout our organization. And this has to stop right now. So now is the time after you explain the table method. You say, all right, so I would like you to explain your thoughts. And do you feel like you understand the perspective? And so wait for the answer. Let him explain. Of course, they're going to be saying obviously something. At the end of that, you ask him, okay, so now since I've heard your side and you've heard my side, and the leaders, it's not just my side also, but it's also some leaders from the team. What are you going to do to address the problem? And you look at them in the eyes and you ask them that question. What are you going to do to address this specific problem? And a lot of times the team members will work with you to come up with the exact thing that they need to do in order to correct it, if they're great team members. Continue. After hearing this, remind John that you need him to share your urgency. He has to do two. Okay, so talk about what needs to be done and remind him, okay, there's two things I need you to do. I need you to share my urgency, and I need you to apply the corrective behavior, the coaching, or the things that we've discussed in this meeting. And you have to reiterate that we're still on the same side of the table, and we're fighting with this thing together, this challenge, this issue, this problem. We're going to fight it together. So, John, by the end of 30 days, I want to be able to look back on this specific conversation and see that it's completely fixed. It can't extend beyond that because this issue can be fixed. It's simply a behavioral change that has to happen. And it has to happen, and starting right now, because we've stopped at the stop sign. We've understood this is an issue, and the behavior, and this has to change. Clearly, whatever the problem is. And I understand that it might require multiple meetings. It probably isn't going to be this one. So by the end of this week, we're going to set up another meeting, and we're going to talk about it. So our first coaching session will be before the end of this week. Rapid improvement is required. So let's work on this together. Guys, this conversation took less than 10 minutes. And if you do these type of conversations with your team and do them well, it creates performance like you would never imagine because you're paying attention as a leader and doing your job. And the team members actually know what the heck it is you expect them to do, what you want, and what you want them to improve. All right. Now, this is in our day and age, it's very important. After you have had some time to think about this conversation today, if anything about this conversation seems unfair or unsafe, specifically, I would like you to make my office your first stop on your way in to work tomorrow morning. Okay. So at this point, just to interject, if they say, I think this is a setup, I don't think you like me from the beginning, I think this whole coaching thing is bogus and it's just an excuse to get rid of me, then you go back to the beginning of the preparation plan, which, by the way, again, you're going to have to reach out to us and ask us to send this to you if you would like it. So, like, I don't think that this is real at all. I think you're just trying to set me up for getting to fire me. Okay, so then you go back to the beginning of the conversation, beginning of the preparation guide. You say, John, I don't think you're hearing me. And we increase the intensity of the clarity around what has to change. And it has very likely has something to do with the attitude that they just exhibited. And so we move forwards. It's very rare that can happen, but sometimes it might be a reality and you might have to face that. And that's your cross to bear and mine as a leader. If they share your urgency and take visible action that you actually experience, like you coached them, they shared your urgency, the action is seen, you led them to success, and your team, you and the team, and they get to grow, and it's awesome. And if not, then you lead to the next conversation. which is now a little bit more expected because you've already had this conversation. So that moves forwards from the first contact through the coaching, because we talked about that through the coaching, and now we move to emotional firing. Emotional firing, what is that? It is all the emotions of a real determination without the actual consequences. So you arrange the meeting, clarify that this is the moment that their job is in fact on the line. So John comes back into the meeting. We have had, hi John, we've had X counseling sessions. That first session happened about a month ago, and we haven't seen shared urgencies. And the coaching that we've given you has not been applied, or has not been successfully seen. The efforts that you have made are just not there. So we haven't experienced any of that from our team applied by you. So recap the initial conversation that you had in the previous counseling session. That might take 2 or 3 minutes. And the fact that you're not seeing the required progress. Be very clear. Explain your discussion with the leaders and how you discussed the improvement plan that you were expecting to see, and the coaching that you've offered, and the fact that no one on the team is perceiving any change in behavior. So we continue. So 2 of the 3 leaders that I surveyed about the progress for this specific problem, when we addressed, they stated that the end of our effort doesn't look like it's making an impact at all, and that the problems are going completely unaddressed. When I asked the leaders to explain your level of urgency, all the leaders are reporting that you are not applying any of my urgency to this same issue that we're facing. And when I asked those same leaders how your reputation is among the team at this point, they're telling me that they don't feel like it's very salvageable. And they all express that they are not sure if you're going to be able to turn things around. So now you insert the table metaphor again. So John, at this point, I'm standing at the table. We've gone from sitting together. The team is on the other side, and now I'm standing, and I need you to help me to decide where we're going to go from here. So emotional fire continues. John, because I respect you, I'm going to be very direct, and I need you to help me by deciding if you'll stay with our company, which of course requires you to apply shared urgency and the coaching that I've given you that's already been provided. Or I'd like you to help me understand if you think it's time for you to move on. If you want to stay, we're going to do an improvement plan where we're going to write down right now in this meeting on a sheet of paper the improvement that we need to see in order for you to be able to stay. And John, there's zero wiggle room from the improvement plan. And by the way, guys, we keep our tone calm, confident, peaceful. We're not at a 10 out of 10 heart rate. We're very calm. We're in control. We're in control of ourselves. Nobody's screaming or yelling. Nobody's super emotional. But we're peaceful because it's a very deliberate process. And we prepared very carefully. And we're moving through this process, even though it's a challenging one. So there's zero wiggle room. And once we have this plan written down, it's on your shoulders. It's squarely on your shoulders. What you write down, what we've decided together has to change in this meeting today. If you want to stay here, must be a reality. And we must see that reality within the next 10 days in our organization. Because we've been working together for a month and you have not applied my coaching or urgency, I have a pretty low level of confidence that you can actually turn this thing around. Because if you wanted to, by now, I believe you would have already done it. That's kind of clear, right, guys? It's very clear and honest. Remember what I said about a team member should never be surprised about what you actually think about their performance. So here we continue. John, there's 2 options. So I need you to go home today from work and talk about this with your spouse. Talk about this with any of your friends or counselors or anybody you need to talk to. And I would like you to take the rest of the day off to think about it. And when you come back in tomorrow, I would like you to tell me if you want to exercise option 1 or option 2. Option 1 means you come back in tomorrow and we create a no wiggle room performance improvement plan. I'm sorry, I just got ahead of myself in my last statement. The performance plan we create when they come in the morning. I haven't done this one in a long time, which is really good. Most of the time, I don't have to do this. So now they come back in the morning and we do the performance plan. The second option is I'm going to provide you with a severance package, and we will make the termination today. So you get to choose these options, and tomorrow morning when you come in, you make that very clear which one you would like to proceed with. And at this point, we do a dignity check. So if things are getting a little bit emotional and we've kind of moved back to the amygdala instead of the prefrontal cortex, we're like, John, remember, I know this is emotional, and I just really would like to get to the bottom of this. Do you understand what's happening right now? And again, when we look back on this conversation 6 months from now, I know we both want to be able to look back on this and remember it was dignified. And so I just want to serve you that way and hope that you're receiving it that way as well. And we continue. So I know this is a lot to process. So go home, talk to friends, spouse, and advisors. Then tomorrow morning, come see me and let me know which option you would like to exercise. The good news is this. If you do this well, the team member will participate in the discussion. They'll help you. If you have to decide for them, do decide. And no one is really that surprised, okay? Because we've worked through this process to get us to this point. If termination is required, at this point, it is very quick and it's very dignified, which is how we want to keep it. It should always stay that way. Nothing has to get ugly, but it's a process that we've moved through very smoothly in order to help our team understand very clearly that improvement has to be made. And there's no surprises. And so many times people aren't aware what anyone thinks about their performance, what their leaders are perspectives is on how they operate among their team. And because of this, people get literally hurt very deeply because they're harmed very deeply. I was searching for the word hurt or harm. They get harmed very, very deeply because no one cared enough to be clear enough to have such a conversation in a process and to work through this process in a very logical and kind way, diligently analyzing the results, talking to the leaders, talking to the team, caring enough about the person in order to be able to work through a process that would help them either move to full improvement and success in the organization or ultimate termination. But it's very swift. Guys, I've seen leaders go on months and months and months when they should have let someone go long, long ago because their soul was left the building. They just forgot to take their body with them. Like their body was still in the building. They were showing up every day, but their mind and their heart were completely somewhere else. And the leader never, for months and months and months, realized that until their performance dropped to a level that was just abominable. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Their team hates them. Their performance is terrible. What do I do? But because they didn't work through a process of coaching upwards to success in the organization, they weren't paying attention. They weren't being a leader, communicating with their teams about what the perspective was of the team members on the performance of the people, why performance has dropped, why do we have inner team conflict and drama that shouldn't be, like what is going on that's causing this team member to fail, because he let it go on long enough for months and months and enough to just stay there because they abdicated their responsibility in their organization to have an uncomfortable conversation that would have created peace and helped everyone. They could have hired a new on-fire team member by now that would have helped lift the organization to a whole new level. But since they just avoided the thing, it just created rot in the department. And you might even find out that 2 or 3 of the other great team members that are great producers left simply because a leader failed to act. Remember, every big problem was once a small problem that a leader failed to address. And you and I have that burden to bear as leaders. That's why we wear the executive's hats. So, to sum all this up, must be clear, focused, safe, dignified, and kind. It has to be all these things, the whole process, in order to be well done. Listen, business is tough. And you will learn in business either to be tough and kind, or you will get out of business. Or you'll just be a pain in the butt and probably not last very long. If you do these conversations well, these very uncomfortable ones, they will be some of the most meaningful and life-changing conversations that you've ever had in your life. These conversations have swung businesses from completely unprofitable in my own rule as an executive to massively profitable in the very next year, because I was willing to do the hard work up front. And I implore you, as you work to become a manager from a leader from a manager, that you learn this skill well, that you take this process and then you apply it in your work and in your business so that you can grow to a whole new level that you would never experience, and that most businesses never experience, simply because they're not willing to drive to that level of clarity and honesty with their team. And it will change your business and it will change your life, because ultimately, when you get better at having hard conversations among your team members, you're going to get better at having hard conversations in your life. And when you have better hard conversations in your life, you'll find out that all of a sudden you've moved to a place that you never realized before was possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for spending your time together with me today. It's been a really great honor to be able to speak on this subject, because it matters so much in business. And so many managers do this so poorly. But as we strive to get better and better as leaders, and we get better and better at having a process and moving through a dignified way of either coaching up or even coaching out, if that's what the end result is, then we get incredible benefit, and the team member benefits greatly, and the greater team benefits greatly, simply because we have started to do our job well as leaders. So this is a critical skill. I hope you've learned much throughout this conversation today. Again, drop a comment or a question in the chat, and we will follow up answering that question for you to make sure that you have that information that you need. As well as, if you want the plan from the training, please send us an email, and I will make sure that you get that, or Karina will make sure that you get that as you work through initiating and having uncomfortable conversations. And if you would like to actually talk to somebody about an uncomfortable conversation that you have, you can also reach out to us, and we'd be glad to talk to you about how to do just that. So, we're talking about the Forge, creating leaders from managers. And the next session is learning to know how to know when and what to do, what is required. Learning how to know, then do when what is required. And that's a very challenging thing as a leader. And next week on Wednesday at 8:30, 9:30 Central, we're going to be talking about that subject. And so many times in business, we don't realize what we have to do, that it doesn't stay static. It's not a one thing. And so as you grow in your executive responsibilities throughout in your organization, how to know and then do what your organization requires from you. We're going to be talking about that in this transition from manager to leader role. So again, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We'd be absolutely happy to answer them. And don't forget to request the resource, and we'll be sending that out to you as you request it from us. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next week in the masterclass on learning how to know then do for your organization what is required.